The time is at hand.
From the city of crackheads in Williamson, West Virginia, this is In Dark Places, and I am Junebug Fugit. Just a little public service announcement. Just when you think you're at the end of your rope and you've hit rock bottom, don't worry, it can get lower. I mentioned the rats that live out in our yard. They're always trying to take the dog food and the chicken food. I don't remember, maybe 2 years ago I was talking about this. They've been struggling to get into the house ever since. They get under the house, but they can't get in the house. So, in an effort to get in the house, these things were cutting around the water line to the refrigerator. You know how you got like a little ice maker and stuff like that in your refrigerator? There's a water line that goes in there. And I guess the rats could see the light coming from the kitchen around that water line, and they were trying to cut through that, and they cut into the water line and busted it. And the fun part is, we didn't discover that until about probably 2 weeks later. One night we were getting ready for bed. We just so happened to hear water spraying around the refrigerator under the house. Kitchen floor was dry, so we didn't have a clue. But it was spraying under the floor. And all the insulation and stuff under the house looked like a big swimming pool when I found it. Got under the house and looked at it, and it was just all full of water. And poked a hole in the bottom of it to let it drain. But that floor in the kitchen has got to go. It's very damaged from being wet now and everything, and I don't know. It's going to be fun times. So shout out to the rats. When I was under the house surveying the damage and trying to figure out how to even get to the water line, because my dad ran that water line and I didn't even know where it came in at or anything. So I was under there for a good 2 hours trying to figure out how to get to the water line so I could cut it off. And while I was under there, there was a rat just staring at me from the other end of the house. Gotta get rid of those things. Any suggestions? Every time I catch one in a trap, 10 new ones appear. So I don't really get rid of the problem. Anyway, this is not a show about rats. We're getting ever so closer to Halloween, so how about I read some more ghost stories? Get you all in the mood for Halloween. Spooky stuff. I used to live in a creepy house. My mom and I never liked being alone in the house. She claims that she's heard footsteps in the hallway before. The reason I don't like being in that house is because when I was alone in there once, 2 little black things flew out of the closet and around the room. They looked like bats. I was so scared I ran down to my grandma's house. She has her own house in our backyard, to stay there for the night. I've dealt with a lot of ghosty goos, and my workplace is haunted as well. I could share a lot of stories, but the most scariest for me would have to be the shadow man with red eyes. I was at my ex's place, and we were chilling out in her room. Next thing you know, we hear very loudly, "Get out," from the corner of her room. That leads to an empty room with stairs to the attic in there. So her and I bolt the heck out of there to her mother's room. Slept there that night on the floor. I woke up to turn over, and midway through my turn, the doorway of the room was a large shadow man figure with red eyes just staring at me. I couldn't move and was freaking out inside. I believe I passed out after a while and woke up that morning with no one believing me. We believe you. Out of all my experiences, that's the most spooky for me. I've seen multiple ghosts and heard plenty of stuff. Back in my other home, I woke up and there wasn't anyone. I got up and passed to the kitchen, and there was a shadow that passed by the window super fast. Not a single step was heard, despite it being very easy to hear any steps. I checked outside, and there was no one there. I was spooked, but did not think much of it. I walked to my room, and on my bed I saw a person dressed in all black, laying there with their arms like they were in a coffin. I shut the door so hard and bolted out of there and peed myself a little bit. My grandma had already seen bad things in that home, and we all had bad vibes. Apparently a man had drowned in a pool outside before we moved in. When I was in 7th or 8th grade, I got my first guitar. My parents are divorced, so my sister and I spent 1 week at my dad's and 1 at my mother's, etc. I always brought my guitar when I went out from one parent's house to the other, as I wanted to practice as much as possible. Good idea. 1 week when I was at my mother's, my dad and my stepmom was going to bed. My room was across the hall from theirs. They heard guitar playing and singing from my room, even though both me and my guitar were at my mom's. It wasn't my voice either. My 2 older siblings lived on their own in different places, far from my dad's house, and neither of them could play guitar. When my dad told me, he also told me that my great-grandpa played guitar. Never could sleep easy in that room, and I guess that explained why. There are several other things that have happened at that house, but I'll save those for later, as this is getting quite long. Not really. It's just a few sentences. It's not long at all. Tell us. We want to hear. 16 years ago, I was visiting my Aunt Mabel in her house in Minneapolis for the first time. She lived in a huge old house with a wraparound porch, large garden out back, and a standard coal chute leading to the basement. There was a ground floor, an upper floor, an attic, and a servant's stair in the back connecting the kitchen to the basement and the upstairs servants' quarters. I had heard through another family member that Aunt Mabel believed there was a ghost. I don't believe in ghosts. Boo. And I didn't engage Aunt Mabel about it. I slept in the guest room that first night and woke up around 1 a.m. to see that my bedroom door was open. And also the bedroom door across the hall was open. No one was sleeping in there. My blurry eyes saw a little boy standing next to the bed in the room across the hall in the darkness. The white doily parts of his vintage clothing were slightly lit up in the moonlight. It appeared that he was looking right at me. I rubbed my eyes and opened them again to see the scene differently. I had mistaken the nightstand covered in a white lace cloth as a little boy. I went back to sleep. Downstairs at breakfast the next morning, my Aunt Mabel asked me how my night went. She hinted that I should share some of my dreams or stories with her. So I told her about the little boy that was actually a nightstand. Her face lit up and she said, "Oh, you saw little Walter?" The house had been home in the early 1900s to a family with a little boy named Walter. One day the boy had been found dead in the basement at the bottom of the coal chute. It had been a mystery, but foul play had been suspected, so says Aunt Mabel. Unfortunately, I have not been in touch with Aunt Mabel for a very long time. I'm still curious as to what the full story was about Walter's family. I have plenty of ghost experiences at my house, but this one is by far the creepiest one, so I'm sharing it. Well, thank you. It was with my dad's friend at a football game. My dad's friend's son was playing, and around halfway through the match, he got tackled super hard. And so he gets onto the bench and just passes out, and medics are running out to him, thinking that he's dead. And the rest of the family is starting to cry and screaming, "He's dead, he's dead." And out of nowhere, my dad's friend starts praying, and it's like he wasn't there. Like he wasn't in the moment. He just shut everything out. And after a moment of me watching him in his prayer, his son gets up like he's doing a sit-up, or like he's been resurrected, and he just looks at his dad, beady-eyed, and said, "Dad, I saw you." The dad talked about it later that night, saying he saw himself praying, and it was like he was a ghost. He saw his son with dead, soulless black eyes wandering in the stadium with his mouth opened all the way. He just watched his son, who was wandering in this soul world, look at him and quickly just disappear and boom, he wakes up, and so does his son. I don't remember this, but my dad did, so here goes. My dad woke up to me crying. I was still a baby at the time. He saw 3 figures, all dark pitch black, with 2 red eyes. The figures froze when my dad said, "What are you doing?" in Spanish. The figures told him they were going to take me to the devil for a sacrifice. My dad saw me in one of those things' arms. He got up quickly screaming at the thing. And here's the thing I don't get. The things vanished into thin air while my dad barely got to me before I fell to the floor. I've had more encounters with these things as I got older and seen and heard them calling my name, which is unique, so I don't understand how they know it. And I've seen what they can do. The only evidence that it ever happened is burn marks I have on my knees, which look like claws and have been there ever since I've known and haven't disappeared since. Although I've seen less of them the last few years, I don't know what is to come for me because the things are possible higher demons due to the knowledge of them coming for me to give me to the devil. So they have immense power and connections to there, although I'm not sure, but it's better for me to plan ahead on what those entities could be. Never saw it, but multiple people have seen 2 ghosts at my cousin's house. Pretty big 3-floor house, if counting the basement. Nice stairs to the 3rd floor. Nicely sized dining room with eat-in kitchen. Multiple people have seen an old man either sitting at the top of the stairs or at the dining table. Multiple people have seen a little girl running around the kitchen table. Cousins that live there have seen them, plus cousin's past girlfriend and one other cousin. I was walking upstairs in an old monument of some sorts, and when I got to the top, I felt something push my back. Not hard, but hard enough to trip me. I thought my brother did it, so I turned around to smack him, and he was at the bottom of the stairs talking to my mom. I clinged to my mom's arm the rest of the time. My girlfriend and I moved into a duplex over the summer with some friends. We took the corner bedroom downstairs, and every night we'd hear this tapping on the wall. It would constantly change pace, and always seemed to start when our TV was off and the room was silent. We moved into the next room over, and now there isn't the tapping, but the door to our old bedroom keeps randomly opening. My dad and grandma said that there is this little girl that walks around the tree line of our house. Never does anything else, but this is just secondhand knowledge. She dresses like in the 1800s. When I was really young, my grandpa and his wife would babysit me every now and then at their house. The house was built in the late 1800s and has been in my family since then. There are bodies buried on the property ranging from newborns to old people, and a guy even died in the house in the 70s. One night when I was around 8-ish, I was in the kitchen getting something to drink when I heard something in the hallway. From the kitchen you can see the staircase to the 2nd floor, and on the top step there was the bottom half of legs just standing there. The wall to the next floor was cutting off the view of the rest of whatever it was. I was so terrified, but not even a second later the thing ran up the stairs and I heard a door slam shut. What scared me is that no one uses the 2nd floor anymore. It's basically just abandoned, and it was even off limits for me. The only people in the house were my grandpa, his wife, and myself at the time. I won't even step in that house anymore. One time when I was 8, I was watching TV with my sister and dad, and was just looking out the window, and then all of a sudden, a woman with a white dress, brown hair, and no feet or hands pops up by one of the propane tanks outside. Of course, I was horrified, so I blinked a few times after I saw her. She was still there, just floating there. So I just ignored it. The actual scary thing was every time I looked back at the propane tank, she was still there, staring right back at me. As I was a kid, I used to have ghosts visit me when I was in bed. two ladies would walk up and down by my bed. I would be scared, so I turned onto my stomach, and they would just kiss my back. The kiss felt ice cold. I know that just by saying I was in bed, people will interpret my story as a dream, but I am 100% certain this is my experience, that I saw and felt those ladies regularly. About 8 or 9 years ago, I was asleep in my room, and I woke up in the middle of the night. My room was completely dark except for some moonlight coming through the curtains. I saw someone sitting on the end of the bed and thought it was my boyfriend. We had separate rooms. I said, "Babe," and the dark figure was gone. I got so scared, I got up and went to his bedroom and haven't slept in there since. When my daughter was little, we had a few experiences that centered around her in two separate houses. When she was 2, she would always tell me about the stars that played in her room at night and woke her up. First, I thought it was a reflection of headlights or something, but then I realized that her room was on the back of the house and no roads were close enough on that side that light would hit her window. One night I was up late after everyone else was asleep, and all of a sudden, something was talking in my ear. It happened so fast that I didn't understand what it said and just noped out of the office and ran to bed. A few nights later, just as I was settling into bed, I heard footsteps, like a little kid, run down the hall around my bed and stop next to me. I assumed it was my daughter, but when I rolled over to look, nothing was there. Other than that one night, I was never frightened living in that house, and that was more fright from something unexpected happening than something sinister. I really feel like there was a child spirit in that house that liked to play with my daughter's toys and tried to reach out to me a couple of times. I used to live in a house that was heavily haunted. I have always been very into the spiritual realm and experienced a lot. We just moved out about 4 months ago due to the hauntings. The house has brought so much negative energy to my family. I don't want to get into detail about that. Anyway, this house was surrounded by cemeteries. The hauntings really started ever since we moved there. I would get dreams of an old woman attacking me, and my whole body would remain stiff for about 5 minutes while I felt my body being scratched. I woke up with bruises on my back one day and a swelling which resembled a vampire's bite on my neck. Besides, one time, my mom saw a man without a head outside her car. She heard a loud knock on her car, and she looked to her left, and there it was. My mother saw an illusion of my brother having a slit neck and running downstairs at the speed of light with a knife in his hands. My brother has heard a voice multiple times of a lady calling out his name when he was upstairs. He said the voice sounds like our mom. When he went to check, no one was around. I was at the neighborhood park one day, and I used to walk there until it was dark. I would always see shadowy figures running around the trees and seats. They'd leave me alone most of the time. There were multiple times kids fall from their bikes, claiming that a force pushed them. They are not lying. I experienced it myself. My friend's father, who worked till late at night, complained that he will always smell flowers in his car while reaching them, passing the cemetery. In fact, there were many times they just have seen things. We just moved out because the hauntings were getting worse. Also, this was a year ago. A family had given a stall to a family who was dwelling a lot with black magic and stuff. Of course, we didn't know they dwelled with black magic at first. We found out later, only after they gave up the shop. We owned a really run-down restaurant. Now, my mother doesn't do black magic, just to clear things up. My parents are very religious. We gave up the business recently, and before leaving the restaurant, I could have sworn I saw a shadowy figure resembling a woman sitting on a chair, and I just knew it was there because that chair has a red string attached to it, and would always be around them. I mean, they were very possessive over it. They planted a spirit there. That family was very immoral. They cheated and stole from us many times, and they were drug addicts. It was messed up. We gave the shop up mainly because they cheated us, but funnily enough, everything only became better after closing the shop and moving out of that home. Also, not to mention praying. God got me out of that place, and I'm so thankful for it. I was visiting my great-grandma with my cousins. I was bored, so I walked into the living room to watch some hockey. Anyways, as I walked in, I saw my 2-year-old cousin playing with some old toy tractors. I asked him what he was doing. He said he was playing with tractors with Pop Pop. Pop Pop was my great-grandpa's nickname, and he died when my cousin was a baby, so there was no way he knew who he was. I was standing in the doorway when I was speaking, and I felt a cold breeze pass over me, kind of like you get when you open a freezer in the supermarket. To this day, I still think my great-grandpa was having fun with his great-grandkids. I was around 8 years old and was sleeping on a pull-out couch at my grandparents' house. The room was filled with old Western books. I woke up and turned to see a little girl in the doorway. I got out of bed and went toward her, thinking she was just a flesh-and-bones girl. When I reached to the doorway, I was pushed back onto the bed. The ghost girl jumped onto my bed, looked at me, disappeared, and then reappeared at the doorway. Confused and a little frustrated, I got back up and attempted to swing at the ghoul, only to find my punch would go through her. Again, I was pushed back onto the bed and joined for a moment before she disappeared and reappeared back at the doorway. At this point, I realized that I was dealing with something invisible that's pushing me around. I grew up in a strict Christian cult, so I started praying with my eyes closed. During my frantic 8-year-old prayer, I opened my eyes to see if she had gone, and she was still there at the door looking at me. After that, I ran out of my room toward my grandparents' room. As I was running down the dark hallway, her ghost body kept flying at me over and over. Like, imagine a whooshing sound. Mine is not really that serious, but it's not BS. I was trying to sleep and I was around 10 years old. I had recently stopped being scared of the dark, but this reignited my fear. I'm short and I have a large bed, and my nightstand is at the bottom of the bed, with my glasses on top, and my glasses randomly fall onto the floor. I slept the rest of the night with the light on. Back in high school, I used to sit on the floor of my closet to do my hair and my makeup. I had a little setup in there, and it worked out well since everything was out of sight. Anyway, I was in there getting ready to head out for the night. First thing that happens is the lights in my room, not the closet, start to slowly dim and get bright. This happened once or twice, and I continued to get ready. Then, a few minutes later, my bedroom door, which is right next to me, slammed closed. When I tried to open it, it wouldn't budge. I'm still sitting on the floor in my closet, but I'm reaching as far as I can for the doorknob when I hear a man whisper, not but an inch from my ear. Oh my God. I'm up and out of my room in a flash. I wouldn't sleep in there for days. Just thinking about it now creeps me out. I'll never forget that voice. Okay, last one. I gotta start ripping out that insulation and rebuilding the kitchen floor, I suppose. My siblings and I have always believed that our childhood home, in which my parents still live, was haunted. We're all grown up and gone, but we still talk about it all the time. I won't go into details, but over the years there have been instances of hearing footsteps in the middle of the night walking around upstairs. None of us were sleepwalkers. Footsteps on our deck outside of 2 of our bedrooms in the middle of the night, having what sounded like an open hand hard hit your bedroom door. 2 instances. Things you've been looking for forever showing up in plain sight, and many more. At my 13th birthday, my friends and I even played with a homemade Ouija board. And when I asked the name of the spirit in the house, it spelled out George, and the power immediately went out. So yeah, we've always been sure our house has been haunted. Flash forward to last night. My parents were babysitting my 1.5-year-old nephew at their place for the weekend. However, they had a party to go to last night, so I made the drive out. It's an acreage of about 20 minutes out of the city we live in to watch him for the evening. Soon after my parents leave for their party, I FaceTime my boyfriend so he can say hi to my nephew. Almost as soon as the call starts, my nephew runs over to the hallway leading to the back porch and stares for a few seconds, and then starts repeating, "Ghost, ghost, ghost," over and over again. My boyfriend and I were both like, ugh. Needless to say, my parents came home to every light in the house on, due to me crapping my pants while I waited for them to return. And that is about all of the big show for this week. Thanks for listening. Really appreciate you. Thanks to the crew at Nighthawk Radio. If you've got a true scary story to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you want us to read your story or something like that, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. I'll see you again in a week or so. I don't know when. Just whenever at this point, I guess. But things are happening behind the scenes, so I'm not just being lazy. We'll see you again next time. God bless.